The southern shore, as it is locally known, is the easternmost coastline of the island of Newfoundland. It proudly reaches into the Atlantic Ocean and hosts some of the oldest settlements in North America, complete with colourful names such as Petty Harbour, Bay Bulls, Mobile, and Burnt Cove. Over 150 kilometres long, it is both bucolic and desolate. Hills that plunge into the forest valleys carved by salmon rivers sit against the rocky and windswept barrens, punctuated by fishing villages. A dramatic coastline complete with a long and textured history. This series celebrates the unusual, the courageous, and the quirky stories that seem to define the communities of the area. And while some are known by locals, the finer details are unknown to others.
Bay Bulls used to be called the Bay of Bulls, I think. But it wasn't in reference to cows or anything, but instead these small black and white seabirds that populate the waters, known locally as bullbirds and dovekies. I think they're actually auks, little auks, lesser auks maybe. Sometimes the Brits call them guillemots, or maybe that's just turs. Either way, they're maggoty in the bay. People used to be able to hunt them, eat them. Bullbird soup is one of the finest soups on the go. Not sure when the government said we couldn't hunt them anymore, but it had to be recently, because I remember growing up on bullbird soup in the winter and spring. Puffins too. Some of the best food you've ever had. They have that fishy red meat taste you get off other seabirds, but it's really rich. Good stuff to keep you going during the lean late winter months, you know. Like most of the shore, Bay Bulls has been fished at and settled off and on since sometime in the 1500s. Safe to say it's seen a lot of history, and since the end of the 17th century, Bay Bulls was after being captured a half a dozen times by the French during the centuries of back and forth wars with the English. The bay itself even saw battles, right smack in the middle of the bay. There's actually one story about a big ship bound for a penal colony down in Australia somewhere, having to stop into Bay Bulls because of a fever outbreak of some kind. The prisoners somehow escaped to St. John's and wreaked havoc, starting fires and so on. Not that anybody blames it on Bay Bulls, but it was a rough old time. These days, it's a pretty big spot. There's a couple of thousand people, lots of houses going up, businesses and so on. But back around 1795, it was just a modest fishing village. Can't imagine how that looked, hey bye. So now, in 1795, there was this military leader, Joseph de Richery, and he led a naval attack on Bay Bulls during a series of raids on Newfoundland in an effort to attack and disrupt the English in any way they could. His soldiers, they'd steal what they could, burn down homes and villages, caused a whole lot of headaches for the folks with a stake in the island and its resources. One such situation drove all the settlers away from their homes in the Bay of Bulls. And when they came back, they found the entire community raided and destroyed. It is said that an elderly woman was furious to find her cow missing, taken by the French out to their warship. It was the only thing she had, really. And it was enough to have her community razed to the ground. But the cow was going to keep her alive, really. she hopped in her boat, in those days likely a small wooden boat like a Rodney or punt, and rowed herself out to the warship in the bay. The soldiers were surprised to find her shouting about the cow, demanding its safe return. They likely couldn't understand much of each other in terms of their tongues, but I'm sure it was very clear what she was getting at as they stared down at her in the little boat. Not much else is known, except that they were impressed by her bravery, and they returned the poor creature, and she rowed back home. Or what was left of it.